So when we left off last time, we talked about the principles of nonverbal communication. Now let's switch gears and talk about some non-communication codes. The first one we'll talk about is communicating through body movement. This is normally known as kinesics. Kinesics comes from the Greek kinesis, meaning movement. So it may sound like words you've heard, like kinesiology, which is the study of physical movement. A lot of people who want to go into physical training, physical therapy, go into that realm. So the fancy word for body movement, kinesics. Now this incorporates all types of body movement, such as facial expression. So how you smile or frown, what facial cues you're giving people. Keep in mind that a lot of people will base your communication off of your facial expressions because we feel like you can't really hide your facial expression that well. But there's always going to be those people who have really good poker faces. You know, the blank face to where you can't really tell what they're feeling on the inside. You'll notice that we've tried to mimic our facial expressions through technology through the use of emoticons and emojis. The next one is eye contact. Eye contact, in case you're curious, is also known as oculesics. Now, eye contact is one of those that really talks about our emotions in a way, because it's going to signal who do we think should be talking right now, how closely connected we are to them, if we're even listening to them. You've probably been in that situation where someone was not looking at you. You said, "Hey, you're not listening to me." And maybe they were listening to you, but because their eye contact was not pointed in your direction, you feel like, no, there was no way you were actually listening to me. Now, eye contact can even convey hostility, such as staring people down, giving them the ugly eye, right? So, again, eye contact is pretty powerful. Even think about your gestures. What's a gesture, you may say? You may ask. It's a hand motion that is used to communicate messages. So, such as waving to tell people hello, or the infamous middle finger to let people know that you're very, very upset with them. Again, you see really both sides of the spectrum, from welcoming and happy, such as a high five or waving hello or goodbye, to those that are not so welcoming, such as flipping the middle finger. And then lastly, we have to think about our posture as well. So if someone's slouching or standing up straight, that's going to communicate a message, right? Because sometimes we think, oh, that person slouching may not really want to be here, or they're lazy, or they don't care. But maybe they just have a bad back that day. Whereas the person who's sitting straight may look confident. Maybe someone's leaning forward or leaning away from you. Usually we lean towards people that we like or conversations that we like, and lean away from people that we don't want to speak to, and people that we're trying to get away from, or conversations that make us uncomfortable. Now usually when I ask students for the very first time to tell me what is nonverbal communication, they say, well, it's body language. And I know what they really mean is that nonverbal communication is kinesics. But kinesics isn't the only way that we communicate nonverbally. We also communicate through our voice. Now this can trick some people because they'll say, well, communicating through my voice, isn't that verbal communication? The words that you say is the verbal communication, but how you say it will be your nonverbal communication. Communicating through your voice is known as vocalics. Now this will incorporate a few different aspects, such as tone. If we think about noted rapper T-Pain and how his vocals sounded computerized and unnatural, it was all about the tone. It wasn't very human-like, but something about that, when he was rising his stardom, was very exciting for a lot of people. Now, some people have a very rich tone. It sounds deep and authoritative, and some people have a more whiny, nasally tone. If we think about the speaker, the actress Fran Drescher, her tone is a little bit more eh. You probably heard her laugh like that a little bit before. I'm not going to mimic her laugh. I could possibly do it, but I'm not going to. But that's one of those ways that tone can affect how people perceive you, or even affect how you see yourself in some ways. Even think about pitch. Now, you may have that one person in your life who has a really low-pitched voice versus someone who has a really high-pitched voice. For me, my friend Pete has a high-pitched voice for a male. And oftentimes, people think, is there something we should know about Pete? And I say, no, Pete's straight. He just has a higher pitched voice. But you see how that connection got made? That someone made an assumption about his sexual orientation based on the pitch of his voice? Something he honestly has no control over? Yeah. Again, nonverbal communication is very, very powerful. It's also been studied that people with a lower pitch tend to be seen as more authoritative, and that people with a higher pitch are seen as less authoritative. Usually, that is related to the fact that children have higher pitched voices. And then when they get older, their voices deepen. Now, I'm not telling you to change your voice and speak with a super, super low tone. Keep your voice at your normal pitch, but understand the characteristics of your pitch as well. Even think about loudness. So your volume can change a message. Yelling, saying, I'm so happy! And I'm not going to yell into the microphone here. But people are really going to understand you are enthusiastic. You are 100% happy. But if you whisper a message saying, hey, I need to talk to you, that whispering will signal just by the volume that this is a private conversation and that that person probably needs to move closer to you to have that private conversation. Then also think about your speech rate. How fast or how slow you speak. Now, if you've been told that you speak too quickly, which a few times I have been told I speak too quickly, be aware that really people want you to slow down so they can better understand you. But in every single human being, we do slow down at times and speed up at times. I know if someone has to go to the bathroom, saying, I have to go to the bathroom, versus, I have to go to the bathroom, and speeding up that second message, it's going to give more urgency to that second message. Now, not only do we communicate through our voice, we communicate through touch. This is known as haptics. In some other books, it's also known as tactile communication. Now, keep in mind that haptics is a lot more important than we probably give it credit for, especially here in the U.S. In fact, they've done studies where they've had infants, and they've deprived those infants of affectionate touch. And usually, those infants suffered emotional development issues. That's very sad to think about. But it lets us know that touch is not just something that we do for the sake of doing it. It's something that we physically need as human beings. It's our form of social interaction. That's so far, the studies prove, it's not just something that can be taken away from us. No, it's a biological need, just like food, just like air. Now, touch comes in different forms. Sometimes there's a more functional, professional type of touch that's used to accomplish some type of task, such as your physician putting their hands on you, or maybe your massage therapist giving you a massage, right? Or even this maybe your coach redirecting your body so that way you can understand how to swing that bat or to throw that ball. Even think about our social polite touch, such as the handshake, right? Keep in mind, handshaking is not a universal. So again, some cultures have it, some cultures don't. Then there's friendship warmth type of touch. This may mean you see your friend having a bad day and you put your hand on their shoulder as kind of like a little form of encouragement, or to say, I'm here for you. There's even our love intimacy types of touch, such as holding your romantic partner's hand, or touching their face, giving them a hug or a kiss. There's even the sexual arousal type of touch, which I think you know what those are, so I'm not going to go into that here. There's even the aggressive, hostile types of touch. You know, the forms of physical violence that we could have, such as slapping, hitting, kicking. Again, all of these are different types of touch. If we look at those different types of touch, we'll notice that our culture and even our gender at times dictates how much or how little we touch others. They've done studies that culturally, Hispanic Americans touch more than Euro Americans. If we were to go to the Middle East, we would see two men holding hands as no big deal. Two women holding hands, no big deal. A man and a woman holding hands, that's a big deal. Here in the U.S., a man and a woman holding hands, not a big deal. Two women holding hands, it's going to depend, it's going to vary. Sometimes a big deal, sometimes not a big deal. Two men holding hands in the U.S., some people are going to have problems. Some people won't, but some people will. Again, that's cultural, because in different places, in different cultures, there are different roles for different genders, and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. Now, we don't only just communicate through touch, we also communicate through personal space. This, if you're looking for the fancy word here, is known as proxemics. It probably sounds like proximity, right? So proxemics is really how we communicate through space. There's intimate space, personal space, social space, and public space. And as we go through those, we're going further and further out. So intimate space is usually 0 to 18 inches. Personal space, also known as our bubble, essentially, 18 inches to about 4 feet. Our social space, which we would usually think about communicating with people in the workplace or about friends and strangers that we don't know very well, that's going to be about 4 to 12 feet away from us. And in public space would be about 12 feet and out. Again, this is cultural. Some cultures, the types of space are a little bit closer in. Others, they're a little bit farther out. Another aspect of personal space that we can think about is territoriality, claiming physical space. Whenever I go into a classroom, I notice who's claimed what seat. And a few weeks later, I notice that when someone new pops up, or someone doesn't have their seat and just decides to sit somewhere else, how that can cause confusion or even some upset feelings. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a late student come in, look to see that someone else is sitting in their seat, give a small little look, and then walk to another seat. But again, they see that as their space, and someone's violating their personal space. You may be the same exact way with maybe things in your home, or even things in your car, or if you're like my students, things in the classroom. So we've talked about quite a few nonverbal codes, and there's a few more that we need to cover in the next video.